Hello witches, it's Keldon. I hope you're all doing well. This is going to be a book recommendation video. It was requested by the lovely Elder Crow of Earthly Alchemy. I will put a link down below to both his channel and his shop. I highly encourage you to check out both because he is just so awesome. He was wondering what are some books that I would recommend to anybody who is interested in exploring traditional witchcraft. Now, as I've said in previous videos, the term traditional witchcraft is not all that helpful. We know that witchcraft is a very large thing that incorporates many different individuals, cultures, traditions, so trying to define what is traditional is nearly impossible due to its subjectivity. All of this, of course, is to say that my list of books here is in no way comprehensive, and if you feel like I've missed something or there's something that you are specifically looking for, just let me know in the comments and I will help you to the best of my ability. So getting into it, one of the major sources of inspiration for traditional witchcraft and its practitioners is the past. Looking into historical and folkloric accounts of witchcraft. Now, there is some debate over the veracity and the inherent value of those sources. Think, for example, of the witch trials. We know that a lot of people confessed under torture. And the line of logic is basically that people would have confessed to pretty much anything they felt they had to in order to escape further pain and death. But as some scholars have kind of examined, that's not the whole picture. There's a little bit more to it than just that. But that's topic for a different video. I'm already catching myself going into a ramble, so I'm going to cut myself off there. Putting those things aside, even if those people weren't actually witches, even if they weren't actually doing those things that they confessed to, their confessions were founded on a folklore of witchcraft, a narrative of witchcraft, and their confessions have helped generate and further that narrative, and it's one that influences us even today, whether we realize it or not. So I find that those sources are valuable. They are wonderful sources of inspiration. We can look at them and we can find things and add them to our craft today. So the first three books that I'm going to talk about really examine those sources. They look at historical and folkloric accounts of witchcraft. They discuss key historical figures, trials, confessions, rituals, spells, and other assorted witch beliefs. The first one is Scottish Witches and Warlocks. These are all by Michael Howard, by the way, these three. Scottish Witches and Warlocks, Welsh Witches and Wizards, and West Country Witches. These books are excellent. They're pretty thin, but they are jammed-packed full of information, and I have found them greatly influential on my practice, very interesting, very informative. The other thing that these books touch on is the topic of Cunningham Folk, which is a whole separate video to be made discussing the difference between Cunningham Folk and witches. If you are interested in what those differences are, let me know. I could perhaps do a video on that. Otherwise, you could read the next two books, which do look into those differences. And even if you're just interested in Cunningham Folk in general, I would recommend these two books. The first is Popular Magic, Cunningham Folk and English History by Owen Davies. And the second is Cunningham Folk and Familiar Spirits by Emma Wilby. I will say that I recommend this one a little bit more just because Emma Wilby's language is a little bit more accessible. But she does cite Popular Magic quite a lot in this book, so I still recommend you read both, but if you had to choose one, I would probably suggest this one. This one does have a topical focus on familiar spirits, but it really gives a well-rounded idea of Cunningham Folk and witches, how they differ, how they're similar, and whatnot. So, really awesome books. Moving forward into modern traditional witchcraft, The first book that I recommend is Modern Wicca, also by Michael Howard. Don't be fooled by the title of this book. There is plenty of information in here on traditional witchcraft, not just Wicca. But I will say that I highly encourage that any witch, regardless of their specific tradition, have a well-rounded idea of the history of modern witchcraft, including Wicca. And this book really does a good job at showing where different things come from, how they developed, kind of where they're going, and whatnot. So it really covers a lot of information, and there is a significant amount of information in here about the history of modern traditional witchcraft. So check this book out. Moving forward, this list would definitely not be complete if I didn't mention Robert Cochran. Robert Cochran is one of the key figures in the history of modern traditional witchcraft. His work, including the Clan of Tubal Cain, have really been influential. So, little blurb, history blurb. Around the same time that Gerald Gardner was coming forward with Wicca and presenting it to the public, other witches were also coming forward, and they were presenting their own claims about their own traditions, and Robert Cochran was one of them. So he didn't ever publish his own book, but there are two really good books, that have his material in them. So the first is The Roebuck and the Thicket, an anthology of the Robert Cochran witchcraft tradition. Basically, this is a collection of articles and essays that he wrote, and also essays and articles written by Evan John Jones, who is another key player. And the second is the Robert Cochran Letters, an insight into modern traditional witchcraft. This is a published book of letters that he wrote between him and a few other people. So these books really get you into his mindset. They really give some core concepts of his specific flavor of traditional witchcraft. And I really think that they are quite fundamental reading for anybody looking to explore this path. And you can find out more history about him and modern traditional witchcraft in Children of Cain. This is also by Michael Howard. This book is excellent. It covers a lot of material ranging from the Clan of Tubal Cain to the Sabbatic craft, horse whisperers, the fairy tradition in America. Just really, really goes into a lot of different stuff. So definitely recommend this book. Now, you might notice that so far a lot of these books, in fact, pretty much all of them, have been history-based. They're not necessarily how-to books. That's something you will come to find a lot, I think, in traditional witchcraft, is that there's not going to be a lot of necessarily how-to or things showing you, like, oh, do this and this and this and this. Like, it's more so, and what I've come to find for myself at least, is that it's more about exploring things yourself, getting your hands dirty, developing your own tradition, developing your own practices, developing things, of course, a big thing is based on old folklore, old historical records, but there's not really a lot of how-tos, I guess. But if that is something you're looking for, the next books that I'm going to recommend have a little bit more of that flavor. They have a little bit more, I don't know how I want to phrase it. They give more kind of examples, I guess. But they're also still things that you can build upon yourself. And if this list would not be complete without Robert Cochran, it would also not be complete without Gemma Gary, who is just a lovely, lovely lady. If you ever get a chance to listen to some of the interviews she's done, she's just so sweet. And many people love her. Her writing is awesome. Her artwork is awesome. Her books just have like this very witchy vibe, I guess. And they're very good places to find inspiration for developing your own practice. The first one, and probably her most popular one, is Traditional Witchcraft, A Cornish Book of Ways. This book is pretty much a primer to different concepts of traditional witchcraft and folk magic. Yeah, this book is excellent. I would say of like all the books that are maybe will be kind of like how-to, this is probably the best one. There are some things I'd like to note about this book, though. The first is that it specifies that it's a Cornish book of ways, and I've seen people kind of run with that in different ways. Another thing that's really important in traditional witchcraft is regionality and land-based practice. You'll notice that like some of these books were specifically dedicated to a specific region, and that's because a lot of traditional witchcraft is based on working with the land you live on, working with those specific land spirits, those specific plants, those specific spirits. I think I just repeated myself, but so this book is kind of inspired by Cornish lore, witch lore, but again, it's meant so that you can find ways to tailor it to the land that you live on. The other thing too that I will say is that there is a lot of Wiccan influence in this book, which is not a bad thing, which is not saying that's a bad thing. But one of the reasons that I recommend that any witch, regardless of their tradition, have a well-rounded understanding of the history of modern witchcraft, including Wicca, is that I see a lot of people bashing on Wicca. Right, Wicca's stupid, traditional witchcraft is way more authentic, but they're turning around and they're still utilizing Wiccan concepts, they're still utilizing Wiccan principles and tools and blah, 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 blah. And I think a lot of times it's because they don't even realize that what they're doing is still Wiccan-based. Now, Gemma Gary, if you listen to some of the interviews that she talks about, she has been initiated into, I believe she was initiated Alexandrian and Gardnerian, and she talks about how there are bits and influences of Wicca in this book, and that's not a problem. Again, I'm not saying that's a problem at all. I'm just saying that it's something that you might want to acknowledge going forward with that book. So, yes, before I get too rambly about that. The next two are also by her. The Black Toad, West Country Witchcraft and Magic. This is just loaded with different spells and charms and just tons of different information. So this is a good one too, more into the spell book kind of category. And finally, the last one by her is The Devil's Dozen, 13 Craft Rites of the Old One. This is a book dedicated to the Horned God, the Devil, the Witch Father, however you know him. And it's basically just a collection of rituals and how to connect with him. They're very awesome. They're excellent rituals. I find that, again, they're things that can easily be moved around to fit your own needs, and you can edit them and make them your own, which is what I highly recommend. Yes, okay, so we got two more books. The next one is my personal favorite, The Devil's Plantation, East Anglian Lore, Witchcraft and Folk Magic by Nigel Pearson. I guess this one isn't really a how-to, but it gives such a wide range of information. He kind of talks a little bit on every topic, working with land spirits, working with familiars, the devil, Cunningham Folk, all kinds of different things. He just touches that a little bit on everything, and it's awesome. And he does it in a way that's really inspiring. It kind of leaves it open for you to develop your own way of doing things. So definitely check that book out. I've done a longer review of it previously, so you can check that out if you want to know more about this book specifically. And the last book is To Fly by Night, The Craft of the Hedge Witch by Veronica Coomer. Well, edited by Veronica Coomer. This book is an anthology of different essays devoted to hedge witchery and crossing the hedge. It's an excellent, excellent book. I highly recommend it to anybody who is interested in crossing the hedge. It's just filled with so much information, so many different perspectives on it, so many different stories, ideas, inspirations. So, yeah, definitely check this out if you are interested in hedge crossing, because that's, for me at least, that's another huge aspect of my craft and traditional witchcraft is spirit flight, going into the other world, engaging with spirits, So, yeah. Well, I hope that was helpful. I hope that this helped somebody. Again, if I missed something or if there's something you're specifically looking for, just let me know down in the comments. And until next time, take care.